Welcome everybody. My name is Michael Corson. I'm going to be taking through a nice walkthrough of the TipHaus dashboard from start to finish, really with an eye for managers and the things that they need to know to get the most out of TipHaus as a product, and to get from kind of step one to running a full payroll. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen one more time. While I'm getting started here, go ahead and let us know where you're coming from. I'm here located in Colombia in South America. I think we have people coming in from all over the States, and maybe from outside the country as well. What we're really going to be getting into today is stuff that we cover on onboarding typically. So when a business comes in and they start talking to TipHaus for the first time, we often get the chance to come in and talk to a few specific people, maybe the owner, maybe the person who's in charge of operations. But really, it often comes down to managers who are in the product day to day, using the software, doing the things that need to be done to get from employees going to the floor, making their sales, clocking in and out, to submitting a document for payroll or making sure that those employees get their hard-earned money. So with that in mind, we're going to dive right in and to cover three kind of big topics at a high level. So what is TipHaus? What does it do? And what do I need to know? So in terms of what TipHaus is, it is a tool to make your lives easier. If you've been in the industry for a long time, you're probably familiar with doing tips on spreadsheets and doing things like managing employees' clock-ins and clock-outs and having employees come to you and say, hey, I forgot to clock in correctly, and now you got to redo your calculations or things like that, or maybe somebody gives you the wrong number, and constantly having to kind of be on top of these calculations. TipHaus is a tool that is designed to automate all of that away. So what we do is we connect directly to POS systems, and we grab sales information. We connect to time tracking systems, which could be your POS or could be a third-party time tracking software, and we grab shift data. And once we know all the employee job codes, once we know all the sales that they made, all the time that they worked, we can do some pretty advanced calculations to set up rules that allow you to automatically get calculations at the end of your pay period that represent what an employee is owed based on the data that's coming from those systems. So taking human error out of the equation and really just letting you live your life in your POS system and your time tracking software, ideally, and then coming into TipHaus and generating an export file or making a payout when you're ready to go. So that's the high level of what we do. Some systems can be fully automated. Some systems can be partially automated. Some systems require a little bit of manual input, especially if you're doing things like complex events or anything like that. What I'm going to take you through is going to be kind of a high level view of the software and just showing you where are the buttons that you need to know about, exactly what are the steps you need to do when you're getting ready to run payroll, where are your support resources, and maybe what are some of the bells and whistles that maybe you don't know about that TipHaus does have as kind of optional features that we can turn on. So with that in mind, let's go over the kind of 5 key pages of the client dashboard. You'll notice that when you're in the client dashboard, you'll actually see 2 extra pages now, one for earned tip access and one for QR tipping, which is brand new. I'll talk a little bit about what those things are, but really we're going to be focusing on what you see when you come into the dashboard and how do you navigate it. So with that in mind, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to share another tab. And if you've come to one of our webinars before from last year, you probably recognize this as the client dashboard and specifically my demo account that I use for all of these things. When you first come into the system, you'll see your pages along the left-hand side, and you'll always open up to this home page, which contains a lot of metrics. And the metrics you're going to be looking at will be by default for all locations. If you have access to more than one location, you can come up to the top and just choose to view one store. Each store is its own kind of beast in TipHaus, so it'll have its own data sets, its own sales, its own shifts, its own rules that have been built, its own breakdown, and those sorts of things. Many, many times, especially at the payroll level, it might be useful to view things at the all location level. For us, we're just going to focus on Bogey's Bonanza, which is one of my fake restaurants here. In the home page, you're going to get access to all of these different kind of metrics. You can customize these, you can remove them for your view, you can come in here and pull from a list of other metrics and pull those in. If you're into data and you're into kind of getting a high level overview of what's going on with tips in your restaurant, this is the place for you. One of our earliest webinars that we did was a presentation on how you can kind of leverage this page to get operational results. So, maybe you are having trouble figuring out exactly how to talk to hires about what they can expect to be making in tips, you can do things like add in a take home per hour by job code and look at this over a multi-week range or a month range and see kind of what do the roles on average make per hour in tips. So use it for making job postings or maybe identify key players, that sort of stuff. If you are interested in any of these kinds of things, I would encourage you to go to our YouTube page. A lot of our webinars are on there. You can see our past ones and get a better idea of how to use this page. For now, I would just say this is a home for data insights. So if you want to see specifically, who is leading your pack, you can see exactly how much money of the overall tips that we're bringing in are going to which job codes or which people. This would be the place to do it. I'm going to come on down to the reporting page. So if you see on the left-hand side, and we're going to go kind of in the order of the flow that we receive data, and I'll take you through how we receive data, where you can view that, where we build rules, and how you can set up kind of how rules are going to work. And then the most important page for you, which will be your breakdown page, where you can see all of these things kind of grouped together in a kind of standard Excel kind of view. So when we talk about reporting, what we're really talking about is data that comes from your systems directly into TipHaus, as well as some other things like historical data. So you'll see here along the top, you have some sales, you have some work shifts, you have some breakdown snapshots. Breakdown snapshots we can cover really quickly. That's just historical data that gets generated every time a pay period closes. So if you want to see an old pay period and get an idea of who got paid what in tips and kind of what data was in our system at that time, we automatically generate snapshots for you that can be downloaded as a CSV. You just come in, grab it, and download it, and you have records for all of your past data needs. The most important thing about TipHaus, and probably the biggest draw that people have, is the ability to connect directly to your systems. So when we connect to your POS and we pull in sales, really easy to come in here, select the day or the date range that you want to look at, and just see what exactly did we pull in. On this page, you really should be seeing a representation that matches your sales reports in your POS. You'll see information that you're familiar with, like the employee name. If you're into the back end of your system, your sale ID numbers, the payroll ID for that employee, the job code for that employee, things like total tenders, subtotal, tax, credit card tips, gift card tips, service charges, all broken out into their own columns so we can do different things with those values. For most of our PO systems, we get the open and the close time of the sale, which allows us to know when a sale is happening and who's doing what during that time that a sale is open. We can even go all the way down to the check level, and you can see the items on this check, the categories those items are in, all at a glance here. If the check was split into multiple checks, you'd see that as well. And then we can also see distribution. So you see the second sale here, we could click on this. Because I have rules set up in here, you can actually see what TipHaus is doing to the specific tips on this check. In this case, we're taking 1% of certain sale items, and we're calculating out what's owed to cooks. And you can see that cooks are taking different amounts from this based on their time worked. And the rest is kind of going into a pool. So after the 8.99 cents goes into this cook distribution, the rest is going out between bartenders, again, based on their time worked. So everything in TipHaus is extremely auditable. I always like to say about this page that there is a ton of information here, probably more information than you're going to want to look at day to day. But if you ever want to see exactly what happened on a specific sale, or you have an employee of yours saying, hey, I had a sale that had a $300 tip on it. Can you show me exactly what TipHaus calculated just so that I can have some peace of mind that that is being calculated correctly, because it's a big portion of my pay. Come right here, you can look up the sale, you can search by employee, you can filter by different job codes, or however you want to look at this stuff. We're really giving you the option of coming in here and pinpointing a specific sale and then seeing start to finish what TipHaus did with that information. This is a hugely powerful tool. Again, probably a little more than you're going to want to look at day to day. On most pages in TipHaus, you'll see a few things that are going to be familiar to you. We have export buttons in blue. You can go ahead and export any data you see. And we also have some actions buttons. So keep an eye out for these action buttons. These are going to give you the extra ability to perform a little bit more customization on anything you're currently looking at. So on the sales page, you would be able to change a sales job code and maybe send it through a different rule set. or maybe do custom team adjustments to tell TipHaus, hey, a very specific group of people work this table, or two servers work this table in tandem. They really need to do something different with the sales tips because it was a unique event or a unique sale or something like that. We'll go into a little bit more detail on this, but again, there is another webinar on YouTube that covers kind of what all these actions do. In terms of managing the software, I really meant what I said. You really just need to manage the software from a standpoint of managing your POS system and managing your time tracking software if you have one, or just making sure that your employees are clocking in and out correctly. When I say clocking out correctly, what I'm really talking about is using the right job code and at the right start time and the right end time. As a manager, you're probably intimately familiar with the kind of issue of keeping on top of employees and making sure they're doing this kind of stuff. One of the benefits of TipHaus is, all the calculations are going to be tied directly to those job codes and those times. So when we look at a server job code, if you want your server sales to go through the server rules and maybe tip out the kitchen and the rest stays with you, you'll need to be, clocked in as a server. If you accidentally were to clock in as a bartender, it would go through a different set of rules and you would be probably pooling those tips with other bartenders potentially. So telling employees, hey, you might all be making the same hourly wages, but when TipHaus goes to make these calculations, it's really depending on you to have the right job code, the right times. That can help ease some of those employee issues and really help to give them some incentive to manage their own clock-ins and clock-outs better. We hear pretty frequently from customers that the move to TipHaus does sometimes drastically, but oftentimes just at least a little bit reduce employee clock-in issues, which is really nice. If you ever have an issue with a clock in, so let's say Alfred here clocks in as a server and forgets to clock out, and the end of the business day comes and goes and they're still clocked in, you can just go directly to the software that you manage your clock ins and clock outs in, make an adjustment there. TipHaus is automatically syncing around every 15 minutes. We're just pulling in changes. You can also come up here and click the sync button and say, hey, I made a change to a shift on the 3rd, sync back, and TipHaus will go grab new data. We'll pull in the change. That is the ideal way to work. If there's one thing you take away from this page, it's that we're pulling data from your systems. We're not pushing any data back into your systems. So while you could come into TipHaus and you could adjust somebody's clock out here, that's not going to make any adjustment in your POS or in your time tracking. So you always want to make the adjustments on your side and let TipHaus sync it in. And that way, your systems match our systems, match what goes out to the employees. There's a lot more we could talk about on this page. If you do have questions about anything, feel free to pop them into the chat. We'll be having a little bit of a Q&A after this session. Also, I want to point out some support resources that are on every page. So if you go up to the top, you'll see a help button. On this help button, there's an awesome learning center full of tons of articles. This is being constantly updated. So you'll have up-to-date articles, up-to-date resources to learn about maybe different ways of doing events or different scenarios, or just how to use the product and where buttons live. We've highlighted the most important buttons on this tour button, and this tour is different on every page. So if you ever get lost, come click the help button, click the tour button, and you can arrow through and it'll show you everything I just showed you and exactly how you can view your information. If all else fails, I am the manager of customer success, and I'm not just giving praise where praise isn't due. My team is excellent. They're very responsive. We really put a ton of time and effort to make sure that you get quick responses. So there's a chat button on your side. You'll see it down here. It looks like a little cartoon chat bubble. Go ahead and click that and ask us any questions you have. We try our best to get on a call with you or get into a chat with you within 5 to 10 minutes and get you direct help. So maybe you need to do an action on sale and you need some more insight on how that works. Or maybe you just forgot which report you need to export when you're doing payroll. Click the button. No questions too small. We're here to help. That's the whole reason we do what we do is to make sure that you get quick access to help when you need it. So yeah, you got a whole team of people at your disposal if you ever get lost. So once we have sales and once we have work shifts, we take those and we route them through automation. So I'm going to go up here to the rules section. In this tip distribution page is going to have 2 types of rules. We have tip sharing rules and tip pools. This is really the core of what we do on those onboarding sessions is get all this stuff set up. As a manager, important that you come in here and click through it, but not so important that you understand every tiny detail about it. As a manager with GM permissions, you wouldn't actually have access to adjust these unless we talk to your org admin. If you are an org admin and you want to make a change to a rule, definitely click the button and ask us. We can help you do that. In general, everything in TipHaus is undoable. So if you do come in here and you make an adjustment and then you're unsure if what you did was correct, we can always walk it back. We can always revert it. So you can feel comfortable in the system. The way this works at a really high level is that tip sharing rules happen first, and then tip pools happen second. So when you look at a tip sharing rule here, this is taking from one job code and giving to another. It can also be taking from a group of job codes and giving to another group. So you think about it as maybe, maybe bartenders tip out their barbacks 10%, and then that would be the tip sharing portion. But maybe the 90% of tips that are left over after that barback tip out need to be then pooled between bartenders. That would be a tip pool. So we take the 10%, send it to the barbacks first, and then pool whatever's left over in your tip pool sections. These rules are highly customizable. You'll see here that you can do it by different tip sources. You can do it by just declare cash amounts. Maybe you want to do your calculations based on how many how many sale items were in the food category on a sale, or how much of the sale was drink sales. We can get really detailed in the way we build rules. We just open one up. Let's take a look at this bartender to busser rule. I'll show you how to just read these rules so that you can dive in and look at your own company setup and kind of get familiar with what your company is doing. Every rule is going to have a name. Some rules are going to use revenue centers. Most rules will not. Revenue centers just apply to where a sale was made within your restaurant. So was it ordered at the bar or on the patio? Some restaurants like to use that kind of functionality. Some don't. If you are using revenue centers and you want some more information, there's a great article on it, or we can talk you through it through support. The distribute from section is going to say, hey, what is going to be distributed? In this case, it's going to be 5% of credit card, gift card, and gratuity service charges that were rung on bartender sales. So it's going to take all the bartender sales. It's going to take 5% of that, and it's going to distribute it out to the people in this distribute to section. So in this case, busters are receiving this 5%. And in this case, busser twos are, they're a little bit more senior than maybe like lead busters. So they're getting twice as much from that 5% per minute as a busser one would get. And it's being distributed daily. So when you look at distribution frequency, you're looking at which minutes are we going to take into account when we do this kind of calculation. So we're saying, take a look at all the busser minutes through the day and figure out how much each person worked. Take a look at all the bartender sales through the day and take 5% of those. We can also go as detailed as doing time of sale type rules, where you would say, hey, take a look at the sales open time and the sales close time. Figure out which bussers were actually working in that window and only do the calculation based on how many minutes each busser worked while the sale was open. So saying less of, how much time did you contribute through the day, and more saying how much did you contribute during this specific sale when the actual work was being done here. So I would really encourage you, if you're a first-time TipHaus user, maybe start by coming to your tip distribution column, click through your rules, and try to get a sense of how tips are being distributed. This is just a way for you to understand what's supposed to happen in terms of calculations and answer some employee questions when they come your way. If your employees are on the employee app, they have some access to this kind of stuff as well, so that they can get some insight into how things are working. Tip pools are very similar. Again, you can click through them. You can take a look. Again, these are taking whatever's left over after tip sharing rules and pooling them. So in this case, all the bartender tips that are left over after they tip out everybody they need to tip out go into a big pool. Based on your minutes worked during the day, you're going to get a cut, or maybe not get a cut if you didn't have very many minutes. If this was a time of sale pool, you would be telling the system, hey, you as a bartender are only going to receive from this pool for sales that you were there working during. So really great if you have multiple bartenders working throughout the day and maybe using a shared drawer or something like that. TipHaus will automatically know, hey, bartender one was there in the morning. All those sales that happened while they were alone, they get all those tips. Bartender B comes in and they kind of share the bar for a while. They'll pool tips during the time that they're together for sales that are happening while they're together. Once bartender A gets cut, tips will just go to that B bartender who's working the end of the night. So everything in here is highly customizable. I'm really just scratching the surface of what's possible here. But just to give you an idea of kind of what TipHaus is doing, we're taking all of your sales data, all your shift data, and we're running it through these kind of pieces of logic that we've built. These can be backdated, so if something's not working out, we can run the rule back in time and get you different calculations. These things can be tweaked to see what a rule set would produce, and then walk back once you kind of get an idea of what's going on. Really useful for any kind of manager who's going to be in charge of tip policy to kind of understand this page. For most managers, you're really just going to be accessing our next page, which is the breakdown, and just kind of making sure that employees are clocking in and out correctly. So on the breakdown page, we'll go pretty quickly on this one. This is going to be kind of your analog to a standard Excel spreadsheet. So what you're looking at here is all of the data we just talked about. The raw data that's coming in is on this page. The calculations that we're making are on this page. And then most importantly, the take-home number is on this page. So when you look at this take-home number, this is the amount that the employees are actually due after all our calculations are complete. On this page, you can choose to show a compact view or show a large view. You can customize the different columns that are on this page. So maybe you want to take off some of these custom columns we've made and just look at take home. We can do that kind of stuff. When you come in here, everything's going to read left to right. So you're going to see the employee. You're going to see the sales that employee made, the tips that were on those sales. In the tip share net and tip pool net categories, you'll see the calculations we made. So how much money did you give or receive through tip sharing rules, or how much money did you put into the pool versus what you took out of the pool? You get hours worked. You'll get things like credit card tip fees if you're charging a portion of credit card transaction costs back to the employees on tips. All of this stuff goes left to right to come out to this take-home number. So you take your total tips plus total service charges, plus or minus anything you gained or gave away from the rules, minus any credit card tip fees, we give you your take-home number. When you're on this page, we do give you some nice soft search options. So if you want to take a look for a specific person, maybe you just want to see what Daphne's up to, you could type in Daphne and just see their results. Maybe you want to see all the servers together. You could go ahead and you could do that. You could sort by clicking on the column headers. So lots of different ways of viewing the data. And you'll see a lot of different colors on this page. So anything that's in blue, you can click on or hover over and get more information. So if you want to go directly to somebody's sales on the reporting page, you can click there. If you want to just view the tip sharing rules for just Daphne, to use that same example, you can come in here and click the button and pull up the tip sharing rules for this day. On this case, on the third as a server, she only gave out through one tip sharing rule, and that was 2 cooks, and she gave out $3.72. You can click on that and see all of the individual sales that were tipped out from. And you can actually click in here again and see exactly what happened on that sale and who received it. At every level, TipHaus is going to be focused on kind of 3 things. We're going to be focused on the automation, so pulling in data and reducing human error, getting everything out of your plate as far as like entering something into a spreadsheet. Then we're going to be focused on compliance stuff, so making sure that you can audit your data and do those sorts of things. We're also going to be focused on just giving you the tools to need to quickly do payroll things. So that's what I want to focus on for this last piece. When you're looking at the data and when you come into TipHaus, all this information at your fingertips, all of these different pages, all of these different things that you can do, what it really comes down to is getting the information into the hands of the people who are going to pay out your staff. Okay. So when you come into TipHaus, there's really a few things that you're going to want to look at. You're going to come into the breakdown page. You're going to click the last pay period button. And you're going to make sure that everything is taken care of in the way that it needs to be taken care of. So what that means is make sure that your staff clocked in and out correctly. Make sure that if there's any changes to work shifts that they're made in the system. TipHaus will give you a red notification if anybody missed a clock out. If you see somebody missing a clock in and somebody just started making sales while they weren't on a shift, you would see a none job code here in the job name because we wouldn't see any shift data for them. So there are a few visual cues. I would always come into the breakdown page around payroll time and I would look at things that are red and things that are orange. Red things are going to denote missing shift data or problems with shift data. And then orange things are going to denote invalid take-homes. So what those are different things that we've set up with your, with your managers that came to the onboarding meeting. And we've said these are job codes that should never take home tips. In this case, if I was going to click on this, I would see that there's a kind of fake employee called event 2 where a lot of event sales are being rung under. And after all the calculations are done, event 2 is taking home some tips. Typically in these situations, it's a standard kind of operating procedure for your restaurant. In this case, in my restaurant, I would need to come into the reporting page and I would need to search those event 2 tips, and I would need to tell TipHaus kind of which servers worked the special event. So I would just come in here to last pay period, pull up those sales, and perform an action. Most of the actions that you're going to take are going to be just a couple minutes. And once you get quick at it, this can often be done in under a minute. So you would address any invalid take homes, address any work shift issues, resync if you need to. Once everything's looking good and your take home numbers are good to go, you're going to have one of two processes. The most common currently is going to be click the export button. We are in the process of moving exports to your inbox. This is going to be a really cool feature. It's going to add some security as far as who's able to pull large amounts of sales data out of your business's TipHaus account. It's also going to allow you to export further than a month. So if you've been a manager who's been trying to maybe generate a year report or maybe a 2 or a 3 year report, you will be able to do that. We're looking to launch that on 2/11. When you export a report, we can generate custom ones for you with any of the headers you need. So I'm going to choose the payroll export, click the export button, and that report's going to be available to me. From there, you just pass it off to payroll and say, hey, these are tips that need to be added in addition to what they made in wages. So again, just to take you quickly through the kind of payroll piece, eyeball the breakdown page and make sure that there's, if there's any adjustments that need to be made in the POS or the time tracking, that you do that. Take care of any unique sales, so handle any events, or if a manager has a sale, make sure you get those tips to the right person. We can help with this if you just click the chat button the first few times. Resync if you made any changes in your POS, just click that sync button so the TipHaus knows, hey, there's new shift data and we want to grab that right away rather than waiting for the automatic 15-minute syncs. And then export from the breakdown. This is the most common form of a payroll process. There are a couple of new things here. I say new. Earn Tip Access has actually been around for about a year and a half now. But if you are an Earn Tip Access user, there is a page here where you can pay out next day. So you potentially are coming in here daily, initiating a payout, sending money to employees electronically who have signed up for that, and then at the end of the pay period, doing that payroll export. If you're interested in Earn Tip Access and you're not signed up, go ahead and click the button. This will be a kind of an advertisement page with a link for more information, and we can get on a call with you and kind of talk about this. I will say the biggest holdups from people adopting Earn Tip Access is kind of a perception that it's going to complicate payroll things or add a bunch of manager tasks. Really, not huge concerns. With Earn Tip Access, the payroll reports can be configured to show how much people have been paid out. If somebody doesn't get signed up or there's a problem paying it out, we can display how much they are still due. So typically the payroll process is the same. You just generate a report and it just says, hey, this is how much they've been paid out already, and this is how much they still need to be paid out in their paychecks. And then from a manager perspective, you are adding in kind of a step of coming in here and clicking a single button, which is really adding 30 minutes to a minute each day to come in here and make the payouts. The benefits here is lots of stuff, keeping less cash in house, not having to deal with putting cash in envelopes if you're paying people out next day. If you're putting tips on paychecks, not having employees need to wait a week or 2 weeks to get their tips, just being able to give them access to it right away when they need it. Some really, really cool things here. If you're interested at all, let us know. We're happy to take you through it. You'll also see a fresh button here called QR tipping. This is a new way of getting tips into TipHaus. So again, if you want to learn more about it, click that button. There's a little bit of reading you can do here as well. What QR tipping actually does is allows you to come in here and generate specific QR codes for people or for job codes. So maybe you have a unique situation of maybe a valet driver or something like that, or a hotel with an omelet station, something where people might be commonly giving that person cash, but in kind of an increasingly cashless world, maybe you want to give them the ability tip out electronically. You can now generate generate QR codes, have the guests scan that, quickly leave a tip. That money comes in, goes out to your employees, and then we would send the revenue back to you as a restaurant to cover that. So really cool features, really cool things that we're seeing with this already. Our biggest adopters so far have been hotels, but we're seeing a lot of use cases that we didn't expect. So maybe you have a cool way that we could use QR tipping. Lots of interesting ways I think that restaurants could kind of utilize this to bring a little bit money into their business and specifically bring that money in to employees who are doing awesome work who maybe aren't always recognized in the form of a tip. So definitely cool stuff. Before we move on, I do want to go really quickly through the employee side. This is some kind of FAQs that we get from managers from time to time. And the biggest question here is, what do my employees see in the employee app? So when you come into TipHaus and when you use this product, you're going to be viewing the client dashboard. Your employees have the opportunity to sign up for something called the employee app. You can think of the employee app as being their own kind of breakdown page, but instead of them seeing a row for every employee on the list, Daphne would just see Daphne's row. And then rather than displaying this as a spreadsheet, because we're just looking at a single person, it's going to display as a ledger. So it's a way for them to track, what were the hours in the system that TipHaus is using to calculate? Did I make a mistake on my clock in? What were the calculations that TipHaus made? How much am I getting from the pool? How much did I give away to bussers today or bar backs or that kind of stuff? And then also to zoom out, which is really cool. So to give them the ability to say, what is my average tip per hour over the last week or over the last 2 weeks? So different ways to get them kind of invested in knowing how much that they're making in tips, knowing how much they can expect to get on their paycheck, or if they're getting paid electronically, knowing how much they got paid electronically and when those payouts are happening. So tons of cool stuff on the employee app. The only thing you need to know is that in order to get ready for the employee app, here in the settings menu of TipHaus, we need to just make sure that the employee has an email address. So long as the employee has an email address here, they just need to go to my.tiphaus.com and enter that email address and they'll be good to go. So I'll show you a little bit about what this looks like. And then we'll move on to some last items and some Q&A. Now, if you ever want to see what's on your employees' My.TipHaus accounts, you can come in here to My.TipHaus and enter your own credentials, same ones you access the client dashboard with, and you'll get a view into what those employees are seeing. You won't be able to click any buttons or sign up for anything, but you will see all the same data. I'm going to go ahead and just log in as a fake employee. And as I said, you're going to see a ledger, right? So I'm looking at the current pay period right now, but I could look at a specific date. I'm looking at one location, but if I work for multiple locations, I could view different locations here. What I'm seeing here is how many tips did I ring in on my sales? How much of that was credit and gift card? How much was a gratuity service charge? Pool distributions will be here. So how much did you take out of the pool versus what you put into the pool? In this case, this person put a little bit more into the pool than what they ended up taking out. If there's any extra fees, they'll be listed here. If you're not using credit card tip fees, they wouldn't be. So the same way the client dashboard kind of read left to right, this reads top to bottom. So what did you ring in? What did you give away or receive? Were there any extra fees that you're responsible for? And that leaves you with your take home number when you add it all up. You can go a little bit deeper, the same way you could with the tip pool net and the tip share net. You can see how much did you put into the pool versus how much you withdrew. If there's a tip share, you can see how much you're giving to another job code and exactly which job codes received which amounts based on the tip sharing rules. We don't give employees enough information to reverse engineer the take-home numbers of their peers. So it's everything in here is listed as in terms of job codes. If you wanted to give them more information, you'd have to do that directly using the client dashboard. But we found that most employee questions can really be dealt with in terms of how much money did I give to barbacks, rather than saying how much money did I give to Sarah. So it's designed to be transparent enough to answer employee questions, but not so transparent that it's going to cause employee problems or start getting questions like, why did this person make this amount and I made this amount? We found that we've kind of struck a nice balance here. It can be somewhat customized if you'd like, so let us know. The bottom here is going to be KPIs. So just different key performance indicators, like how much time did you work on the pay period you're looking at? What were your total sales? What's your average tip percentage? You're making 18.4%. Maybe it's your goal over the year to get up to 22% average tip. So maybe just understanding what is the average guest leaving you in tips might be something that you find useful as a server. Things like take home per hour, total service charges, all listed here. There's a work shifts tab. So this would show you all the different shifts you work. We find a lot of employees will bring problems to their managers a little bit faster with this page, assuming they're using the employee app. So, if you come in here and you say, wow, my Sunday tips are $49. I was really expecting to make 200. Pretty easy for an employee to just come in here and say, oh, I clocked in as a barista. I meant to clock in as a server. So we go tell their manager and kind of fix it. Just giving them an idea of what TipHaus is using in their calculations. They get their own metrics page. Probably the most useful metric here would be take home per hour. So if you were to look at this over a pay period and say, hey, in addition to my wages, I'm making $13 an hour. A really useful number for employees to have, especially when we're talking about like employee retention. If the employee is basing their decisions on where they're going to go next, or if they're going to change jobs based on their hourly wages, great if they can have all the information and understand what are their hourly wages plus their hourly tip wages, which is something that kind of previously has been a little hard for employees to access. Also really useful kind of information to have if you're an employee who's applying for a car loan or a home loan or something like that, having some kind of proof of income, or you're going to go rent an apartment and you have to have a certain a certain hourly wage that you have to hit. Being able to include your tip wages and those kinds of things can help people qualify for things based on their real wages, not just their hourly portion. There are things like peer-to-peer. I didn't mention this on the reporting page earlier, but this would allow employees to share money before they get it on their paycheck. So maybe somebody wants to give somebody $20 for covering a shift. They could do that. They just send $20. The person they send to would get $20 more on their paycheck. They would get $20 less. It's all tracked in the client dashboard. But a really nice feature for employees who are on the kind of standard payroll. If they're on Earn Tip Access, they would get their chance to either sign up for House Direct, link a card of their choosing, and get paid out that way, or to sign up for a House Money card, which is a kind of a credit building account where it operates like a debit account, has some protections in places that you don't damage their credit, that sort of stuff. But they can get paid out their money directly to a new account that they sign up for with us that has some cool benefits. One of being is that there's no kind of direct deposit fee with House Money. So two options there. If you're not a House Money user, the employees would just see this message that says, hey, your employee's not enrolled in this program yet. If you're curious, you can ask them about it. But if you are signed up for that, they can just sign up directly here, and this becomes a nice payout page showing them what they've gotten paid out. Most useful for managers on the settings page is this My Profile. When you look at the My Profile page, you might think this is kind of boring stuff, changing passwords, updating PIN codes, things like that. But there's two things I want to point out, maybe three. Contact Us button. Your employees get support just like you do. We can help with a lot of stuff. We can explain to them what they're looking at. We can show them how we got to our calculation numbers and that kind of stuff. If an employee says to us, I should have gotten $200 more on this event, that's where our ability to help kind of breaks down, and we might need to pull you into the conversation or redirect them back to you. We know what the system is designed to do, but we don't know exactly what's going on at an individual event level. So that's where your context comes into play. But quite a few of your employee questions can just be routed to us if they know that this is here. So let your employees know that they can contact us. I'd love to hear from them. There's tip distribution settings. I would encourage your staff to take a look at this. This just shows them the rule set. So in the same way you can go to the tip distribution setting page in the dashboard and look at your rules, employees can do the same thing for themselves. This is a coffee shop, so it's just a big front of house pool here. But if Missouri Corona had a question, they could come in here and say, okay, so if I'm a barista or a counter or a cook, I'm going to get some money out of the pool. We all get equal amounts from the pool per minute worked. But managers and ghost logins and online orders, those are just put into the pool, but they don't actually take something out. They have a point value of 0. When are you going to get this money? If you worked the sale. So if you work time while the sale is open, you're going to get a cut of that sales tips. It takes some time. I'd say, if you're new to TipHaus, the first 2-3 weeks, you'll get a huge increase in employee questions. the more you kind of push them back to the employee app to answer those questions, the more we can help, the more we can kind of get things up to speed. After 2 or 3 weeks, we should see a dip in employee questions. If you've been with us for a long time and you're not seeing that dip, you can give us a call. We can talk through it and maybe give you some ideas on how do we just educate your staff on what's going on here. But yeah, generally getting them in the habit of contacting us and looking at their own tip distribution rules helps quite a bit. They also have their own help articles. So this is help articles not only for things that are related to TipHaus, but also to the Earn Tip Access program. So if they're a House Money user or a House Direct user or anything like that, we're filling that article center with things that are relevant to them. How do you link a bank account? How do you make a transfer? How do you find an ATM? These sorts of things are all there for them. So I really encourage you to point them to this My Profile page and specifically to the resources section. So this is the employee app. We are getting towards the end of our time here, so I want to save some time to talk about some things that are coming up. From a very high level, just recap everything we talked about. Client dashboard is your center to do the things you need to do. You'll probably be on the breakdown page to get your overview of the pay period, to get your payroll in order. You might need to adjust a few specific sales. That's the reporting page. And you might need to make a payout, which is the ETA page. Everything else is just kind of bells and whistles. And this kind of average payroll process really should be taking you somewhere, even if you're doing a ton of events, somewhere between 10 and 30 minutes once a pay period. If you're spending a ton more time than that, let us know. We might be able to streamline something. Maybe there's processes there that aren't automated that could be. We did a webinar on that. It's also on YouTube. Just like how do you identify processes that you're doing repeatedly, and what are the tools that TipHaus can use to help that become automated. So hopefully, if you learn nothing else, getting an idea of what's possible here, what a standard flow looks like, and then knowing that you can talk to us will help bring you along. There's a lot of information here, a lot of information I didn't cover. So I would encourage you to go to that YouTube channel and just view some of the other stuff if you have more questions, or the article center, or give us a call. We already talked about ETA. The business registration step is just a couple of emails that you got to fill out. The employee registration step is just them going into that employee app and clicking on those buttons. The payroll aspects of this can generally be handled without any changes, just maybe a conversation with your payroll company about what's going on. So if you think it would be interesting to pay out your employees daily, and you'd like to talk more about that, go to that ETA page and just click the button, but we won't spend too much time talking about this at all. I do want to let you know that there are a few things coming up. So I mentioned compliance when I talked about things that we're always going to be kind of focused on. TipHaus, in addition to being a awesome program for automation, it is also an awesome record keeper. So when we pull in data, we store that data for you. When we make calculations, we create breakdown snapshots of that kind of stuff. And you can go back in time and you can kind of look through all that stuff, which is one portion of compliance. So what we're going to be talking about on March 11th here is kind of this pillar of the TipHaus product that is compliance and security, and how we are going to be able to help you with that. Some of the things that we're going to be talking about are going to be things that are kind of preemptively avoiding compliance problems. So how do you set up rules? How do you know that those rules are the correct rules or legal options for tipping in your area? We have a nice legal resource center here at TipHaus. So if you do have questions about what's legal in your area, we can run that by them. Our team and our team of onboarders, and me included, we also have a lot of compliance training when it comes to tips, so we can help you as a resource. If we're not confident as a legal resource for you, we'll put you in touch with someone who is, kind of giving you an idea of what you have at your disposal there. Also, just kind of understanding what happens during an audit and what people might need to look at, and how TipHaus provides data for people who may want to look at it in the future. Obviously, our hope is that you never have to go through an audit, but in the few times where a TipHaus customer has had somebody coming knocking on their door and saying, hey, there's some question about how you've been doing tips, rather than having to go back through and hopefully have those spreadsheets saved and going back through payroll and all this kind of stuff, it's typically a nice, easy process to come into TipHaus, look at the window they want to look at, download reports or configure reports they want them to be configured, and then download them, which is really nice. And then also things like, how does changing the way we're exporting reports and sending those to your email, how does that increase security? How does our roles and permission feature and giving you more control over how you give people access to the system, how does that help you with legal compliance? So think about, preventative stuff, how we can help you during an audit, um, how do we store data in general, and then what is TipHaus's kind of vision for the future, and how are we talking about security, and how are we talking about compliance? As we're growing as a company, this is front and center for us. You'll notice that there's some secure sign-on stuff that's happening, and changes to these exports. This is all with this kind of pillar of our business in mind. So if you haven't scanned that QR code already, I would definitely scan it if you're interested in this at all, especially for our bigger businesses. Definitely stuff that we definitely want to talk about with you. We also have on February 25th, tip pooling and tip sharing best practices and industry trends. This is going to be a chance for you to hear from our COO, Kirk Grogan. And Kirk's going to be talking about things that he is seeing in the industry at a high level, from talking to lots of people at conferences, from talking to legal experts, from just looking at our data at a high level, which he is awesome at doing. And he's even better at speaking. So if you want to hear about this kind of stuff, get an edge on kind of what's going to happen in the industry this year, what we think is going to happen. Look at some options for how you might get ahead of that stuff in terms of maybe changing some operations, or using rule sets in a different way, or maybe introducing some QR tipping to get some more money coming into to the people at your company who really deserve it. All kinds of stuff that'll be covered in this. It should be a pretty interesting webinar, so I'd definitely give this a scan as well. With that, I'm going to leave this up here for a few minutes. I'm going to take a look at some Q&A stuff, and then I have one more thing to share with you as well. It's coming up in the future. Let's take a look at some questions. Oh, we got Connie Skidmore. Hi, Connie. Long time no see. Will we have a choice of keeping our exports straight from TipHaus, or will they always be sent to our inbox? This is a great question. So with the change that's happening on the 11th, these will be sent to the inbox. That is really the only way to give really strong access to big detailed reports. What we've seen pretty frequently is people using multiple, having multiple people use one login, which has some security things as well. So being able to tie the user to a specific email inbox and add that extra level of protection, like maybe you walk up to the computer and it's there for you, and you can click the export button, rather than have that export show up as a download that you can just grab immediately. Making sure that it goes to an inbox that has its own protections and stuff is on our mind. If you have feedback for us on this, Connie, I would definitely send me an email. We want to hear about what people want to do. Maybe there is a world where we can do short-term downloads, some things for a pay period. Maybe that still can be done from the breakdown page directly, but maybe long-term exports could be done straight to email. So there's different ways we could talk about this. At the moment, we're gearing it towards everything going towards the email. But of course, any feedback that anybody has about our product or any features you want to see, we definitely want to hear from you. It's a great question. We have Lauren. Is there an added cost for earned tip access or QR tipping features? From a business perspective, there is no added cost. So QR tipping, absolutely free. It just comes in, you use the QR tipping and simply we turn on for you. Earned tip access, lots of people do think that is going to be an extra added cost since it's a full payout feature. But that is free as well. So if you want to turn those things on, you definitely can. The only thing that could potentially be a business cost there would be the house direct fees, which is our direct deposit option. So in order to send money to existing employee accounts, we do need to do some send money from our banking environment out to employee banks. So there is a little bit of a fee there. The employer can choose to take that fee on, but most often they position that as an employee cost and say, hey, you're going to be paying a small fee if you want to have the benefit of getting the money directly to an external account that you already have. So all that to say, no fees for either one of them. If you're interested in them, don't let that stop you. We can talk you through what it would look like, what the lift would kind of be. Really, really low management, low operations type products for both earned tip access and QR tipping if you're interested. What is the best way to train my employees on using TipHaus? That's a fantastic question. When we talk about training employees to use TipHaus, it's really getting them on the employee app and then letting them know where they can find their support resources, which again, that's on the My Profile page under resources. That's really about it. Making sure they understand that, that's the key. When it comes to people using earned tip access. The key there is trust. So when you're talking about money being moved, things get a little bit more just a little bit more important for employees when they're starting to see, hey, I'm used to getting in my paycheck and now I'm getting electronically. How do I verify that this is correct? The employee app is probably the biggest tool to make that happen. The other thing we've noticed is really setting employees up with a really good understanding of house money and a really good understanding of house direct so that they make the right choice and then understand exactly what each of those choices entail. That's going to be a huge one. So we're working on getting some new documentation out, which we'll send out to everybody. Things that you can pass off to your employees to make things a little bit more clear to them. What we've noticed is that when we're talking at like the onboarding level and we're on an ownership call, we have a really good time to talk through everything TipHaus. The sales team takes everybody through things. Our onboarding team takes everybody through the different features, and we get a nice deep dive into here. And then most managers get something like that as well. But maybe you join late, maybe you're somebody on this call, something like this to kind of bridge that gap in education, make sure that you get a chance to get a nice, good onboarding session and go through all the pages of TipHaus as well, has been really, really successful for us. What we're focusing on this year is going to be a little bit more education directly to the employees to make sure that they also trust and understand TipHaus and that they understand their payout options and everything that we're doing. Most of the time when we hear from employees, it's some question of, hey, something looks funny in my numbers. I don't know if I trust this. I don't know how you got to this number, but it's not the number I got to on my paper. Really easy for us to hop on a call with them or maybe bring the manager in and have a call together and just to walk them through it and say, hey, this is what TipHaus is doing. This is the benefit to your company. This is the things, these are the things that you can use. We would much rather educate people up front and much rather have them be aware of the employee app up front rather than do that down the line once it's already been implemented. So we're going to be focusing on that as well. For you as managers, again, get them into the employee app and get them over to that resource section and make sure they understand where they can answer their own questions. That'll be the most valuable to you. Last one here. How do I set up QR code tipping for my restaurant? Go click the QR button and request a session. It is a brand new feature, so you'll be put into a call directly with me or directly with our VP of Customer Success, Nathan Andrus, and we'll walk you through the feature in detail. It is extremely easy. We just need to make sure that you understand how things are going to work, make sure that you're set up in terms of configurations to make that product work before we turn it on. But once we do those sorts of things, which are more our tasks than your tasks, once those things are set up, it's just as simple as going in and starting to create QR codes and then putting them out into the physical space and putting them out in the real world so that guests can go scan them. We've seen some awesome use cases. So this is probably the one I'm most excited about. So if somebody's got a good idea about QR tipping, even if it's something that's out there and wild and maybe won't work, I'm curious to see the way that you're thinking about this. Okay, I got one more slide for you. This is our no tax on tips and overtime petition. We're partnering with Zeller Law Group to try to get some legislation out there to remove tax from tips and overtime. So what we see is a lot of employees make a ton of money off of tips, and tips have become such a standard part of the society. What we really want to do is just try to make it so that employees can keep more of their hard-earned money, especially in the kind of tip sphere. So I would scan this. I would go get on the petition. The more people we can get out there kind of pushing for this, the better chance we have it hitting the floor as legislation. So really cool stuff going on at TipHaus. If you like this webinar, we have a lot more on YouTube. We also have a lot more coming up. So keep an eye out for fun stuff. With that, I'll leave you there and just say thank you. Reach out to support with any questions. If you have any questions that come to your mind after this is done, feel free to reach out to me directly. We love talking to you. We love hearing from you. Anytime you need anything at all, we try to be here. So keep that in mind as you're getting into the platform and clicking around. Be comfortable in it. And keep an eye out for any inefficiencies. If there's something that you would like to do faster, we might have a solution for you. So reach out. Maybe we can help you optimize something. All right, thanks.